Sometimes I feel like I tend to prefer to do it my way first, and then see what the director wants me to do and adjust that way. Sometimes I like to touch base with them ahead of time and really heavily talk about the character and roles because I'm not quite sure of where they want this to go, so I need more of their input. So it honestly depends on the project, depends on the film, depends on the character I'm playing, and depends on the director.
This is the Faith and Family Filmmakers Podcast, helping filmmakers who share a Christian worldview stay in touch, informed, and inspired. Quiet on set. Rolling. Today's host is Matt Chastain.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Faith and Family Filmmakers Podcast. My name is Matt Chastain, your humble host, and we are back with Debby Gerber, an amazing actor who just has such a cool story coming from Switzerland, basically stumbling upon the Stella Adler Academy of Acting, the greatest acting school probably in all of California, if not all of the United States, and just really growing a pretty awesome career. So, Debby, thanks again for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Just happy to be here.
Yeah, it's fun. So we're going to get into, I think that the last episode really led us well into you talking about your own personal transition, kind of into the more faith genre of feature films. But, I had an acting coach on a couple episodes ago, and brilliant guy, and he kind of led us to a conclusion that being a Christ follower, we have to, and you as a preacher's kid yourself, you kind of practice setting aside your own ego, practice dying to self. Practice, again, it's all about killing your own ego. And some of us are better than that at others. Some of you people are better than that than I am, obviously. But it feels like to me that really sets you up for being a better actor. When you can set your own ego aside, set your own perspective aside, and obviously we have to adopt Christ's perspective, that also allows you to adopt the perspective of the character whom you're playing. So have you found that to be the case? Being a Christian makes you a better actress?
I actually think so. Not just a better actor, obviously a better human, but also it's just, for me specifically, it helped me so much being okay with, whenever something doesn't work out, whenever you're auditioning for roles and they're not happening. I think because I'm a Christian, because I'm a believer, certain roles God has meant for me and certain roles are not meant for me. So it is now so much easier for me to just accept how things are and move on and just be happy. I think a lot of actors tend to be very unhappy. Maybe I wouldn't say unmotivated, but it's almost like sometimes they don't really have a goal, unless it's just to become big and famous and whatnot. I think for me, my goal truly is to just be me, just remain who I am, but tell God-honoring stories that matter. And gosh, if our stories can change a person's life, like if they meet Jesus for the first time because they saw your film, I mean, it's so powerful. It's so incredible. So I do think we have, such amazing tools available to us, and it's on us and how we use them and why we use them and for what reasons we use them. Yeah, it changed a lot for me once I realized I want to really tell God-honoring stories. It changed how I looked at everything, basically.
I love that. You had mentioned kind of in your specific questions to ask here, you put the phrase faith-based films taking over Hollywood.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of us a lot of Christians in the faith-based industry, I don't know that we have that positive a view on it, but it sounds like that the industry really is changing and our films are becoming more accepted. And you yourself as a working actress are able to step into this genre and not become a pariah in the industry.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely, like I said in the previous episode, I definitely feel like Hollywood is opening up its gates for faith-based content, for faith-based films, good content with good meaning, God-honoring stories. And it used to be a taboo. It used to be, you do not talk about Jesus. You do not talk about God, especially as an actor. You don't dare say that you're a Christian, or again, you would be canceled. Hollywood would not work with you. Now it's quite the opposite. The Chosen opened up that door, and now there's actors doing advertisement and commercials for that Hallow app, even though I believe it's more of a Catholic prayer app, I believe. But nevertheless, there's now famous people coming out advertising this app, saying that they're Christian. I'm just like, amazing. People that would have never come out 5 years ago, So most definitely, Hollywood is opening up its doors for all of us, giving us a platform and for just allowing these stories to be told that deserve and need to be told.
I think contrary to popular belief, there are really good Christian films being made. Well, obviously
Yes.
now that we've got The
Yeah.
Chosen, like you said, Jesus Revolution,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of them. But I think outside of the choir, so to speak, and we've been preaching to the choir for a long time,
Mm,
and I think there have been Christian movies for years that have been good, but I don't think the outside world has recognized that. But now maybe they are.
I agree. I think there is years and years ago, yeah, there were maybe some good movies out there, but a lot of Christian film, because we were lacking funding, tended to not have the best quality, not have the best, camera, whatever, and maybe not even the best actors. And it was just kind of more cringy, and that's why Hollywood was kind of laughing at us. But goodness gracious, seriously, our production value has gone up so much over the last few years in faith-based film. I also just saw, gosh, I'm blanking on the name now, but The Family of the Small Bones for King and Country. That film that came out last year was also like an incredible, incredible movie and won
I can
awards.
only
And
imagine.
no, I watched it twice, so I should know. But it's the story of the family from the two brothers for King and Country. Their family coming to U.S. and I'm totally banging on it.
I've
It's
heard
fine.
about that story, but
Yeah,
I
you
didn't get a
probably know
chance
what
to
I'm
see it
talking
myself.
about. But that was such a powerful movie as well, and made waves. So yes, there is more funding now, I think, too. Like, we're getting more funding for Christian films so that we can produce more quality films and are not getting laughed at for having poor quality films. Even if the story is amazing, sometimes it was just lacking quality and people would just not want to watch it. But now, if we have a bit more funding and really professional people that, know their craft, not just your family and friends. And yes, you need to work with your family and friends, but also know your craft, study your craft, be proficient at what you do. And if you come together and put all your heart into it, you will have an amazing movie that will move an audience.
And that is the goal. And I'll
Mm,
stand by this. I think Kirk Cameron, who's been in Christian movies for 25 years,
mm,
is a phenomenal actor. So
yes.
we've always had some good talent in and around the industry.
Yeah.
Well, I want to hear more about because you have two, not one, but two faith-based film releases coming up in 2025. So
Actually, probably three.
three?
Yeah.
Why not make it four?
I
Let's
mean,
shoot another one this
actually, maybe
afternoon.
four, but the other one's a series. So,
Well, let's talk about each of those. I want to dive into these
oh,
great movies.
yeah, so I did shoot, well, three of them I shot last year. One of them I am shooting actually next month, but it's planning to be released hopefully later this year, if not early next year. But the first one is Somewhere Else. That is a faith-based film directed and written by my friend Martin Samuel, and that is starring Cameron Arnett and Karen Abercrombie, who are obviously geniuses in what they do, and it was such a huge blessing and honor for me to be working with both of them and really just meet them and talk with them, and kind of pick their brains a little bit on set. Both were an amazing blessing to work with. But yeah, that film, we're currently looking for distribution. We're hoping we're going to find something later this year so that we can have a theatrical release. This is a film about a deaf girl and the Christian parents really struggling with that and kind of almost blaming God, like, why did you give us a daughter who is deaf? And that is a very hard topic. Things happen, obviously, that the girl acts out because of she's not being accepted by her family and things like that. So it just takes an unexpected turn, I'll say. It's a very moving, heartbreaking film, I would say.
That's almost in the apologetics category because it almost
Mm,
deals with the question, why does God
mm-hmm,
allow so much suffering?
mm-hmm. And even to the point of like, did he do this? Which obviously opens up a huge discussion of like, why would
Yeah,
God do this? And like, no, he didn't do this. It's what, that's the whole point, right? That's a discussion of like, why do these things happen and how do we as Christians deal with it? So
right.
that is, I think, an amazing film. And again, hopefully coming out later this year. The other one is Beyond Belief. That one we filmed last year for like a month or 5 weeks in the Chicago area, more Woodstock and Chicago. And that one's directed by Johnny Meyer. And it's more of a coming of age film. It does include the music from Petra, the Christian rock band Petra. And obviously they're older now, and this film is set in the 60s and 70s. So Petra, the band, is in the film, but not the current members, obviously, because it wouldn't make sense. So
Oh,
we
those
did
guys are
cast
probably in their
actors.
60s or 70s.
Yes, they are, and they're wonderful, and they actually came to set, and we met them all, but,
That's
like, so
awesome.
obviously, for it to make sense, they themselves could not be in the movie,
Right.
but we cast you know, but we cast people that looked like them when they were in their late 20s and early 30s, and, this is the first film ever that Petra has allowed to use their music on because they believed so much in the story of this film. It's a beautiful film about a teenage boy who is a wannabe rock star and is obviously a huge Petra fan. And he's trying to run a marathon. And while he's running a marathon, he's hearing God's voice. And that's kind of where it starts. And it's just a beautiful family movie, really. It's about the bond of a family, faith, but then also struggling with faith, when traumatic things happen. Again, almost same with Somewhere Else, of like, what do you do when something traumatic happens in your life? What do you do with that as a Christian? How do you handle it? So that question gets asked as well. And then a big question in this movie is, when you hear God's voice, what do you do with that? Do you act on it? Do you ignore it? Can you hear it? Are you listening to it? So yeah, it's a lot of that. And it's just a really beautiful, motivating, obviously family-friendly movie that I think a lot of families would enjoy.
That's exciting. I've got to see that one. I remember going to a Petra concert with my youth group in Macon, Georgia in 1988, 89, something like that. I don't
Oh,
know. They were hair
so
band, big
cool.
80s hair band. It was,
Oh, and they're so good.
yeah.
And I will say, I have to say, I did not know them before this movie. They were kind of before my
You're
generation.
young, yeah.
But but once I booked the film, obviously I was listening to their music, and they're really, really good, like
Yeah.
incredibly good. I actually really enjoy their music.
Legit musicians.
So,
There's another Christian film that I think got a little overlooked several
mhm.
years ago called Electric Jesus, about this Christian
I've heard of it.
rock
I didn't see
band.
it, but I heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, a buddy of mine, Caleb Hoffman, plays the drummer in that band.
Oh,
But it's
nice.
got Kevin from The Office, a lot of
Mm.
other folks. But yeah, I like all the Christian movies, in the
Mhm.
music genre, going
Yes.
over all these bands we used to all listen to growing up. That's pretty
I
exciting.
love it.
So,
Yeah.
that's exciting. You have a lot going on right now in terms of Christian movie releases. We'll
Mhm.
all go see those movies. I want to dive a little deeper just into get real nerdy in terms of acting.
Uh-huh.
I always try to ask an actor this because as a director myself, I learn my craft through actors. And so I always want to
Right,
know,
yeah.
as an actor, what do you want most from a director?
I honestly feel like every director obviously is very different, personality-wise, directing style-wise. So I tend to try to get to know the director and his directing style and work with him or her. It's like I'm not set in a certain way of like, this is how I need things to be done.
And you don't fit in Hollywood at all then.
Maybe not. I don't know. No, I hope I'm easy to get along with. Because yeah, it also depends on the role very much. Sometimes I feel like I tend to prefer to do it my way first, and then see what the director wants me to do and adjust that way. Sometimes I like to touch base with them ahead of time and really heavily talk about the character and roles because I'm not quite sure of where they want this to go, so I need more of their input. So it honestly depends on the project, depends on the film, depends on the character I'm playing, and depends on the director. I don't have a 101 of this is how I do it every time. I guess I'm flexible in that sense. But one thing that I will say that I've learned over the years, that has become very important to me is when there is a somewhat dramatic scene, where it's very emotional or sad or to a point where you have to get to a certain place, and that is not always easy, obviously. I've learned that I need to stand up for myself and that I need to request for time and quiet, because that can be very, very difficult on a set, obviously, when you have like 50 or 100 people running all around you and setting up their lights and whatnot, and people screaming at each other, and you're trying to get into character. And yes, maybe you have a green room, but maybe you don't. So when you're like in between setups and you're trying to stay in character, then I would be like, just kindly asking, can people just try to keep it down a little bit? Maybe don't ask me what I want for dinner, like don't ask questions that are not needed right now and kind of leave me alone, give me my time. And then what I think is important is, and I've learned that actually from, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on people's names. Eastwood, director, actor. Thank you,
Clint
Clint
Eastwood.
Eastwood. I did background on a film that he did, so that's what I learned from him. What he does is he counts down 3, 2, 1, and then he tells the actors to just go whenever they're ready. There is no action, there is no cut,
When you're ready.
and he will roll cameras, and it can be 10, 15 seconds of quiet, and when the actor is ready, they go. And when I saw that, that's really when I was like, oh, wow, I get it now. Obviously, that's also going into money because when you roll for 15 seconds, that, can be expensive maybe depending on what camera you're using. But for emotional scenes or whatnot, I now do tend to tell people, if you can, start rolling and I will go when I'm ready.
I find that the directors tend to be one of two things. You're either an actor's director or you're a DP's
Yes.
director, right? And a DP's director, I was associate producer on a film, and I watched the director, and he was so concerned with his cameras and angles, and they were choreographing everything, and that was kind of the dominant kind of ethos of the set. And as if actors are supposed to just do your thing, but we had to tell them, hey, man, just calm everything down a little bit and let your, because these were very dramatic scenes, and you let your actors do their thing as well. Don't forget about them, right? Be respectful of what they need to do to kind of get into that hypnotic state. So good for you for standing up for that, for sure. Another thing I'm always curious about with actors is, this is kind of a broad question probably, but what's your favorite roles to really sink your teeth into? What gets you excited as an actor?
Honestly, the role that I just played in Beyond Belief was a dream role. And it sounds maybe not, when I just say what it is, it's going to be like, oh, really? Because yes, it was the mom, the wife, but there's so much more to it. And the scenes were just so beautifully written. They were so rich and so much backstory that came out through those scenes. And you really saw the bond the family had with what they were saying and how they were acting. It was just, that to me, like I kept saying to the writers and my directors, like, I love every single scene I get to play here. And I don't say that about every movie I do. Every single scene, I was like, this is so powerful. This is so beautiful. It's so meaningful that it was just really a joy to dive into that every single take, every single time. It used to be when I started out more, I loved to play characters that were so not me. Like, I was yearning and looking for all the character roles, for the druggie, for the alcoholic, for like the abusive mom and whatnot, just to almost like challenge myself, and see what I can do and what I really can't do, where my borders are, I guess, limitations are, and really also wanting to, really look ugly and just nasty and just all the things. And I got to play those parts and it was so fun. It was so cool to dig my teeth into that and understanding those people, understanding where they come from. And that may be my social work background, because I have such a love for people that, are going through things that have it rough in their life, and I have such a love for those people that I was like, I want to dig into their history and want to understand where they come from, why they are who they are now, like what happened in their past that, made them become who they are and what can help them to get out of this. So that still is one of my passions today. It's just now happens that I book a lot of wife and mom roles, which is, I'm totally okay with that. But yeah, those were gold. Like those kind of roles were like really, really fun to play.
At least you get to play the young mom, like the mom of babies and young kids.
Yeah.
I'm getting the like.
I mean, I will say my kid in Beyond Belief is a bit older. He's in the film, he's supposed to be 15. In real life, he is 23.
Oh boy.
So
yeah, I'm getting, with a gray beard, I'm getting cast as dad of older teenager and college student, which is like,
there you go. But hey, I'm like, if I book the role, I'm not going to complain.
Exactly.
So.
I want to go back into one more thing real quick, because I think a lot of people listening to this are aspiring writers, maybe aspiring directors, but writers specifically. And I do think one good bit of advice for writers, if you're writing a screenplay, is to, as you say, write something that the actor is going to love. Write something that's really going to give the actor a lot to do, a lot to dig into. So do you have any advice for writers from the perspective of an actor? Things they can do, things they shouldn't do, that really help you as an actor open that script and go, this is juicy, give me more.
Gosh, I'm going to try not to offend anybody.
Oh, no. This is the last part of the second episode. This is the offensive part of the podcast, so go for it. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Just write good dialogue, man. I've read some really tremendous scripts, but I've read a lot of crappy scripts, and that's just because the dialogue doesn't
Right.
go deep enough, because the dialogue is very much on the surface or even cheesy or not important enough. We have to be able to dig deep, and uncover who these characters are. Yes, in some scripts, it is up to the actor to create those characters because you cannot say everything and cannot write everything. So it's on us to create that past. But it's also interesting for an audience to know more about those characters and about their history and, again, why they are who they are today. But for me, it's, gosh, better dialogue. Like on Beyond Belief, I had some really, really wonderful dialogue. And it wasn't just your regular conversations. It was, talking about things you don't necessarily want to talk about, not shying away from topics, going deep, really, not being afraid of going deep, and uncovering things. I don't know if that helps at all, but it's,
And I would guess
yeah.
writing in subtext, I think, helps an
Mhm.
actor act, correct?
Yes, totally.
Rather than so blatantly expositional.
Yeah. I don't know if that helps at all, but
I mean, it really helps everybody because you talk about being on set, and the magic of being on
Mm,
set really is, from my experience, is the collaboration.
yeah,
When everybody on set, from the actor to the director to the craft services person, when everybody's ego is gone and we're
yeah,
all working together to do nothing but
yes,
serve the story,
yeah,
that's when you kind of have that kind of magic buzz going around set. And so that's kind of what I think it sounds like
absolutely.
you're most attracted to in this job.
Absolutely. And I think for us actors, it is so important to know, it doesn't matter what kind of movie you're working on, but just to always remember that, yes, it's teamwork. Just because you're the actor doesn't mean you're better than anybody. It really isn't. It is a teamwork, and every single person on that set matters. Doesn't matter what their position is. I'm seeing that a lot in Hollywood because I've done a lot of background work. I've seen a lot of PAs getting treated horribly. I've seen background people getting treated horribly because some people think they're better than them. Also in the faith-based world, it tends to happen. So I think that's, for me, important, and I really try to do that, to treat everyone the same with a lot of respect and love and kindness. And, it goes back to the Bible. Treat thy neighbor how you want to be treated. I mean, if you want to be treated horribly, go ahead. Like, no, no, but I would assume you want to be treated nicely and with respect and with love, and with patience. So be that, do that.
That's a great place to end it. Debby Gerber, thank you so
Yay.
much. This has been an absolute pleasure talking to you and getting to know all about your world. And thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for caring. Thank you so much for asking those questions. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Faith and Family Filmmakers Podcast. If you've been enjoying this podcast, take a moment to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast player so you don't miss an episode. And if you'd like to support the production of this podcast, you can leave a tip at faffpodcast.com/support. Bringing filmmakers together for faith and family.